Have you ever noticed that when you start to change for real, the people around you begin to feel uncomfortable? They don't speak openly, of course. They will disguise it with jokes, with advice masked as concern, or with that awkward silence when you talk about something deeper. But deep down, what's really happening is simple. Your mental evolution threatens their comfort zone, and no one likes to be forced to confront their own complacency. Perhaps you are going through exactly this right now. You started to think differently, act differently, maybe even question things you once accepted without a second thought. And suddenly you began to feel alone, misunderstood, judged. What no one told you, and what nature understood better than anyone else, is that this is the price of building a strong mind. Not just any kind of strength, but a strength so intense, so real, that it makes others uncomfortable. It scares them. It exposes, without saying a word, the weakness of those who still live on autopilot. But why does this happen? Because a truly powerful mind is a threat to collective mediocrity, and nature was clear about this. When you decide to think for yourself, create your own values, and abandon the comfortable illusion of ready-made truths, you become dangerous. Dangerous to the system, dangerous to others, and most importantly, dangerous to your former self. This video is a call, a challenge. It's not made for those who are comfortable, nor for those who want easy answers. It's made for you who is tired of being a hostage to your own insecurities, who feels on the brink of an internal rupture, and who is ready to build something that no one can destroy, a mind that no one can manipulate, a mind that terrifies because it does not bend. So, if you feel ready for this path, a lonely, tough, but absolutely transformative path, stay. Because what nature has to teach you will confront you, but it can also set you free. And after this, you will never think the same way again. Nietzsche was not just a philosopher, he was a surgeon of the human soul. Someone who had the courage to look into the abyss of existence, and not only face it, but dive into it. And it is precisely in that abyss, in that inner chaos that many avoid, that he found the source of true strength. Because for nature, it is not in peace, stability, or order that a human being transforms. It is in pain, it is in the fall, it is in chaos. He wrote, "You need to have a chaos inside you to give birth to a dancing star." This is not poetic metaphor. It is psychological diagnosis. It means that if you want to build an unshakable mind, you need to abandon the childish idea that it will happen through comfort, cheap motivation, or positive affirmations. No, true strength is born when you face suffering without fleeing, when you stop asking for life to be easier and start wishing to be stronger. Think of the times you grew the most. Was it when everything was fine? Or was it when you were shattered, lost, directionless, having to rebuild yourself with your own hands? Anzi believed that suffering was not a mistake of existence, but rather its main driving force. He did not romanticize pain. He faced it as a tool. And if you can change your relationship with pain, with failure, with loneliness, you begin to shape something rare, an indomitable spirit. And it is precisely there that the world begins to be disturbed by you. Because, while most flee from chaos, you will learn to walk within it. While others beg for normality, you will create greatness. But this transformation requires a brutal break with everything you were taught about strength. Being strong is not about smiling all the time. It is not about having fake emotional control. Being strong is enduring the unbearable and coming out on the other side even more dangerous. But nature knew that chaos by itself is not enough. You can be destroyed by it if you do not have an inner center, an anchor. And that is why, in the next part, we will talk about the most decisive moment of Nietzschean philosophy, when he kills God and places upon you the full weight of existential responsibility. Because when there is no longer a sky to look up to, it is within you that the universe needs to be born. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. When Enzi declared, "God is dead," he was not celebrating. He was issuing a warning. A warning that many still do not understand today. What he killed was not a divine figure in itself. He killed the illusion. The illusion that there is a higher authority taking care of everything. The illusion that there is a plan, a pre-established meaning, a purpose given by someone from the outside. The death of God is the end of any excuse. And that is frightening, because until then it was easy to outsource the responsibility for your life. It was comforting to believe that everything has a reason, that suffering is part of a divine plan, that there is a greater good that will justify everything in the end. Nature violently tears this veil away. He looks you in the face and says, "You are alone. There is no ready-made meaning. Now you are the creator." And this is where the true construction of a powerful mind begins. Because most people collapse when they realize they are alone in the face of chaos, without a manual, without guarantees, with no one to blame. But those who have the courage to face this without crumbling, they begin to forge an unshakable consciousness. With the death of God, nature pushes you into the abyss of radical freedom. You should not follow commandments. You must create values. You should not obey. You must surpass yourself. It is the birth of brutal autonomy. And along with it comes the weight. Everything now depends on you. There is no more absolution. There is no more salvation. Either you build yourself or you sink. But here is the secret. This freedom that frightens you is also the greatest source of power you can have. When you understand that no one will come to save you, something within you awakens. A fire that compels you to rise even while bleeding. That forces you to think for yourself, to feel for yourself, to act not because someone said it is right, but because you decided it is. It is in this rupture with existential crutches that nature prepares the ground for something even more grandiose. The emergence of a new way of being. A type of human being who does not live according to the rules of the herd. Who does not need approval or permission. A being who creates their own morality. Who surpasses their own limits and lives as a creator. A being that frightens the weak because it forces them to see themselves as they truly are. This being has a name. Nah called it the Übermensch, the Overman, and it is about him that we will talk now. Because if you want to build a mind so strong that no one can break it, you need to understand how to become this figure who lives above conventions, guided only by their own will. To power. Let's dive into this. Nature did not believe in the slow and passive evolution of humanity. He believed in rupture, in radical transformation, in creative destruction. And that is why he conceived the idea of the Übermensch, the Overman. It is not about a superhero. It is not someone with mystical powers. The Übermensch is a being who has overcome everything that binds the ordinary man. Guilt, obedience, herd morality, the need for acceptance. The Übermensch does not seek to be accepted. He does not ask for permission to exist. He creates his own internal laws and lives by them. Even if that puts him against the entire world, and that is exactly why his mind becomes unbreakable, because it is not built on the expectations of others. It does not. A mind that stands on its own does not hunger for approval. It does not bend to external validation. It draws its strength from its inner drive, its fierce instinct to carve reality into its own shape. This is the heart of it. The Overman does not reshape himself for the world, he reshapes the world around himself. He does not chase comfort, he chases greatness. He never asks, "Is this permitted?" but instead, does this honor who I am becoming? And that single shift turns everything upside down. Because once you see yourself as a creator rather than a servant, your entire inner landscape begins to change. But here is the truth no one wants to face. Becoming this kind of being demands sacrifice. You will have to kill the pieces of you that still beg to be liked. You will feel the sharp sting of not fitting in. You will carry the weight of reinventing yourself without applause, without reassurance, without anyone saying, "You're on the right path." And most people collapse under that weight. They quit before they begin. They retreat to the safety of second-hand beliefs, recycled morals, rules that were never theirs to begin with. The road to becoming the overman is solitary, and nature understood this deeply. He himself lived on the outside, misinterpreted, mocked, branded insane by the world he hoped to awaken. And yet, in that isolation, he discovered liberation. That is what you must grasp. The stronger your mind becomes, the further you drift from the crowd. The higher you rise, the more you unsettle those who cannot rise with you, and your very presence begins to disturb them. Becoming the overman is the harshest transformation one can undergo, because it requires you to strip away everything inside you that is borrowed, inherited, imposed by a culture that rewards obedience and punishes originality. Only after the destruction comes creation. But that creation never happens in noise, it happens in the silence of withdrawal, in the solitude that filters the strong from the weak. And that is why, in the next phase, we descend into the most neglected but most powerful part of this evolution, the solitude of the strong. Because, to become unbreakable, you must learn to walk alone. And very few are prepared for that. If this message resonates with your soul, you will find value in my ebook, Beyond the Shadow. It breaks down Jung's core insights and offers tools to understand yourself on a deeper level. The link is pinned in the comments. But here is a truth almost no one speaks about. The stronger you grow, the lonelier you feel. Not because you want to isolate yourself, but because the world no longer knows how to place you. Nature was explicit about this. The free spirit, the one who refuses easy answers, who thinks independently, who refuses to accept the comforting lies of society, inevitably drifts away from the herd. And that distance hurts. Yet, that pain is essential. True growth needs space, and you cannot rise while chained to other people's expectations. Most remain trapped inside invisible crowds, where every thought is restricted and every action measured by others' reactions. You learned to walk with the group, think like the group, feel safe in their shadow. But nature's path is the opposite. He tears you out of the warmth of the herd and throws you into the open desert. In that desert, there are no cheers, no guidance, no applause. There is only you, your fears, your doubts, your trauma, your urge to run. And that is where the real examination begins. Most people sprint back to the crowd. They bury themselves behind their masks again. They pretend they feel nothing, know nothing, see nothing. But you, if you truly wish to become someone unbreakable, must remain standing. You must withstand the silence that exposes who you are beneath all illusions. Nietzsche said, the individual must always struggle not to be absorbed by the tribe. And he was right. You will feel lonely, sometimes terrified, but the price is always worth paying if the reward is possession of your true self. Because once you genuinely own yourself, no one else can own you. No one can decide your value. No one can drag you down again. But this ownership has its cost. Loneliness. You will lose people. You will be misunderstood. You will be called arrogant, distant, emotionless. They will attempt to drag you back into their mold. They will label you insane, cold, indifferent. But that is simply the cost of refusing to be domesticated. It is the price of not needing validation. It is the price of refusing to live as a reflection of others' needs. And here is the raw truth. If you cannot endure solitude, you are not prepared for freedom. All true freedom comes with abandonment. Abandonment of illusions, of emotional crutches, of friendships built on convenience. That is why nature saw solitude not as punishment but as privilege. In that solitude, the real self finally has room to emerge. And once it emerges, something else inevitably happens, the confrontation with mediocrity. Because when you grow strong, mediocrity feels threatened. It senses your transformation and it reacts. And that is exactly what nature warned about. The danger of collective mediocrity. The world never targets those who stay the same. It targets those who dare to rise. Nietzsche did not fear tyrants, he feared the quiet, corrosive power of the masses. This invisible force pulls everyone downward. It punishes free thought. It rewards compliance. It disguises cowardice as virtue. True tyranny does not come from rulers, it comes from the crowd that demands you shrink so they, Dante, have to grow. And that is what happens when you begin to stand out. When your mind sharpens, your presence intensifies, your confidence unsettles. You disturb them not because you are wrong, but because you are rare. And society despises the rare. Mediocrity cannot tolerate brilliance, because it exposes the darkness that average people live in. Nietzsche called this slave morality, where the weak invert values to make their limitations look noble. Strength becomes arrogance. Ambition becomes selfishness. Independence becomes coldness. And with this twisted morality, the weak condemn the strong not out of compassion, but resentment. They do not want liberation, they want the strong to fall. That is why, when you elevate yourself, they begin to attack you, sometimes subtly, sometimes openly. They want you to return to the group. They want you to make them feel comfortable again, but your existence alone becomes a mirror they cannot look into. Most people live in fearful conformity. Anyone who challenges that world is seen as a threat. But mediocrity does not attack with logic. It attacks with numbers, with guilt, with social pressure. It will try to make you doubt yourself. It will try to make you feel wrong for not fitting in. And at this point, many give up. They cannot bear being the strange one. But nature would call you something else necessary, because while the world recycles the same ideas, desires, and values, it is the strong individual who introduces discomfort that allows something new to be born. Your difference is the seed of transformation. But it is also a target. Strength, autonomy, free thought. These are acts of rebellion against mediocrity. And like any act of war, it requires preparation, not physical weapons, but mental ones. And that is what the final part will reveal, the true cost and true power of becoming unbreakable.